the same thing going on today in many, many fields. Just recently, somebody had spoken up and he was talking about a certain episode that was supposed to have happened in World War II, so about 45 years ago, till it was brought to his attention that a few years ago the British government officially said that report was made up. It was supposed to stir people up and make them angry so they'd be in a mood to go to war. It wasn't true. British government officially said that. Doesn't matter. Somebody else came across it somewhere. He doesn't realize it was later denounced as a lie, and he repeats it. And it'll probably be repeated for 100 years. The propaganda that was around Europe about the Muslims during the time of the Crusades was imaginary, but it's been passed down, and a lot of people still believe it. One Muslim has done a fine job of collecting a lot of this. He's documented all of these things and where the stories originated. He's collected a lot of Crusades material. You know, in the 13th century, the British used to be told that in Palestine, the Muslims have a giant statue of their prophet made of solid gold, and when a pigeon lands on it, the bird instantly dies. Well, that's what a lot of people believed about 700 years ago, and that's the kind of thing that was talked about then, and it has an effect right down to today, where people still think something strange about Muslims. One man recently said on radio in Canada, he's a well-known commentator, he's a writer of television programs, he's a journalist, very famous man. He recently said, having some discussion about warfare and so on, he says, do you know that the Muslim believes that if he's fighting for the sake of God and he's killed, he'll be rewarded? See, isn't that frightening? Isn't that stupid? What does the Christian believe? Something different? What does the Christian believe? You ask him, if you're fighting in the way of God and you get killed, what happens? You get punished? Or do you have a reward? Tell you the same thing the Muslim will tell you. But somehow when you tell it that way and you make it sound scary, you forget. But you might say the same thing. That's more an example of the second thing I'm talking about, that Muslims are often misunderstood by intention. There are people who deliberately try to make it look bad. Sometimes they fool themselves, but they certainly fool a lot of other people. I don't know if you ever saw this thing that happened, it's been about 3 years ago, when the Queen of England visited Saudi Arabia. And there was a picture that ran in British newspapers, which some photographer took in Saudi Arabia. It was just a few days before the Queen got there. What happened was, there were some workers, about 4 or 5 Muslim workers at the airport, and it was time for prayer. Well, they were out, you know, in the open, the runway area, or out in the open. It's time for prayer, so they turned, they faced Mecca, and they started to pray. It so happened that right in front of them was one of these stairways that they wheel up to the airplanes when people get off. It just happened to be in front of them, but they were facing that thing because that way is Mecca, and they started to pray. This photographer waited. He waited until they made ruku, until they were standing like that, facing the stairs, and he took that picture. And it ran in British newspapers saying, these were Muslims practicing to greet the Queen when she stepped off the plane. There's the stairs, this is how they bow. See how people are deliberately misled. That's the caption that ran into that picture. But unfortunately, often Muslims are misunderstood because of their own fault. One way that happens, I've already mentioned, is that too often today Muslims are letting non-Muslims tell Muslims what Muslims believe. Sometimes, and it usually works. They'll say to the Muslim, you know, you people believe such and such and so. And this Muslim is thinking, I didn't know that. He says, and look, it's wrong, because. And he goes ahead and he blows it all away and shows why it's no good. And the Muslim is saying, what am I going to do now? When he didn't believe that in the first place, or he shouldn't have. It's not part of Islam. Somebody told him it was, and he thought it was, and now he sees it's no good. That's your own fault for being that unaware of things, or ignorant, like an unkind word. People are letting them explain what Muslims believe. I meet people like that all the time, and when I respond, they don't like it at all. I've had people many times that say, you know, you Muslims believe such and such. And I say, no, we do not. Yes, you do. I said, no, I'm a Muslim. I'm telling you, I don't believe that. You do. Because the rest of his argument won't work if I don't go along the way he wants me to go. So by way of advice, I suppose I could give a lot of advice. I need a lot of advice too, but I'm just suggesting some things that you might keep in mind. The Muslim's job is not to go to the non-Muslim and say, you should leave what you have and you should be a Muslim. That is not your job. It's not what you do when you talk about Islam to somebody. You say, look, you're wrong, this is right. Leave that, come here. That is not found in the Qur'an. What you find is a systematic way of leading people along. The Quranic plan works this way. It tells you, when you speak with a non-Muslim, you tell him, commit no excess in your religion. In other words, you tell him, you should be more careful about your own religion. You say this, you say that, but you don't have any proof. Leave it. Don't say that, but say the things for which you have proof, because I believe those too. You have proof, I should believe it. Commit no excesses in your religion. So it is that over many centuries, there have been people who have come to Islam, and when their families thought they'd lost their minds, they tried to explain to their families, no, you see, I'm a better whatever I used to be. There's a famous case of about 100 years ago of Lord Headley, a British nobleman. He accepted Islam, and his family thought he has gone crazy. And he wrote them a very nice letter, which is still in circulation today, where he explained to them, no, you see, by becoming a Muslim, I became a better Christian. Because I stopped doing the things which Christians are not authorized to do, and the next thing I knew, I was doing what I believed Jesus wanted me to do, and it happened to lead me here. You have as an example, if the reports are true, not my problem whether they're true or not, but people who believe all of the reports they have, what did Jesus say and do, it's reported that he told people, let your greeting to one another be, peace be with you. Who says peace be with you when they greet one another? Christians or Muslims? Muslims, whether they speak Arabic or not, they say, Salam alaikum, peace be with you. It's reported Jesus used to fast for more than a month at a time. Who fasts, Muslims or Christians? It says in one place in the Bible, when he prayed, he put his head on the ground. Who prayed like that with their head on the ground? Christians or Muslims? Who starts to look more like maybe this is the group that's following Jesus? That's just an example of the kind of thing I'm talking about. So really, when you're talking to the non-Muslim, your goal is not to say, turn against what you have and take what I have. The first thing is, are you sure about all the things you do? Which of them can you prove? And you do better if you leave the things you can't prove and stick to the ones you can prove. Then see what kind of progress you make. The second point is restraint, I suppose. Think carefully about the kinds of things that people show you. As many people have said, Muslims and non-Muslims alike, intelligent people who've thought about it, the greatest part of the debates that you get into with people are because you put today's meaning on yesterday's words. So that, for an example, the Muslim says, Jesus is not the Son of God. And the Christian says, look, it brings out the Bible and it reads Jesus, Son of God. And the Muslim says, somebody put that in there, it's a lie. No, it was probably there for 2,000 years. But what did it mean 2,000 years ago? See, when a man reads today, Son of God, capital S, it means to him a whole lot of things. But 2,000 years ago, what did it mean? Same source will tell you that one day the Jews came, they wanted to argue with Jesus. First thing they told him was, we're the sons of God. Jesus said, no, you're not the sons of God. I'm a son of God. You're the sons of the devil. Whatever he's talking about, he's not talking about what people talk about today when they mean sons of God, or sons of the devil, for that matter. It's a way of speaking in the language of the day to say, who looks after you anyway? Who's